Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a wrap up of all the books I read in October. Yay! I didn't have as many 5-star reads this month as I usually do, so it was a bit of a meh month, but there were a few 5 stars, so I'll get into it. First of all, we have Pumpkinheads. This is a graphic novel and this was so cute. I gave this one 5 stars and this was the first book that I read in October, and I really thought that I was going to have a great month because when your first read is 5 stars you think that's it, but no. Yeah, it was really sweet and I really enjoyed this book. It's only a short story, but it was cute. Up next is The Killings at Kingfisher Hall by Sophie Hannah. This is the 4th book she has written with the detective being Hercule Poirot. And it was good. It was probably one of my favourites of the 4 that I've read so far. He felt more rounded as a character, but I am still very conflicted over writing new mysteries with an already established detective. I think she could have just stuck her own detective in the books and they still would have been just as good. I'm not really sure there's a need to copy Agatha Christie there. But I gave it 4 stars. It was a good read and yeah, it was fun. Up next is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This I gave 3 stars. I was very conflicted reading it. I swayed between 3 and 4. I might go back and change my mind to it being a 4-star one day. But this was... I'd heard very mixed reviews about this book, but I tried to go into it with an open mind. It comes with a lot of trigger warnings, so I would recommend reading them first before you pick up this book if you think that you're gonna be upset by tough content. But it was a quick read. I got through it fast. It was easy to read. I can see why Colleen Hoover's books are so popular. This is the 2nd one I've read now, and they're just quite easy to get through and not too difficult to understand. So yeah, 3 stars. Up next is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Monero Garcia. This was one of the weirdest books I read in October and I was so disappointed by it. I gave it 3 stars. I think it was really like 2.5 stars rounded up. But yeah, I'd had so many people be like, oh, you love Gothic fiction, this will be so up your street. And I just found it so boring, so drivelly and so dull. It really took all my effort to get through it, but I quite like the characters, so 1 star. I quite liked the cover, I guess 2 stars, and then the ending was the weirdest ending I've ever read, but it was kind of memorable, so I guess 3 stars. So there we go. Mexican Gothic. Up next is The Book Eaters by Sunny Dean. This was a really weird book for me. Initially, after putting it down, I gave it 4 stars. And then about 3 weeks later, I sat and wrote the review for my book blog, and I quickly realised that I didn't like it and have subsequently knocked it down to 2 stars. I will leave a link to the book review in the description, so if you want to read it, you can. I don't want to offend anyone, but I think I was very much swept up in that, oh, this is a new book. And then when I came to actually talk about it, struggled to find things I liked about it. So yeah, 2 stars for The Book Eaters. Up next is the Sleeping Beauties graphic novel, volume 2. This was due to be released in July. I only recently got it, so I really struggled to remember how the graphic novel ended in volume 1. But I quickly caught myself up and I know the original story anyway. As always, the drawings in this are incredible. I loved it. I gave it 4 stars overall, mainly because it is a really thick book and I think so much of it was cut out and jumped through to make it work in a graphic novel that the story felt a bit jagged and a bit rough. But the drawings were great. It was fun and it was quick and easy to read, and I think it made Sleeping Beauties it was already a good story, but it made a good graphic novel if you accept that a lot of the main story was lost. So yeah, 4 stars. Up next, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King. This book I also gave 3 stars. This was a very interesting book to read. I found the initial part, the opening few chapters, amazing, and the end amazing. And then in the middle, it just fell a bit flat. The story is of a girl who's lost in the woods, and it gets a bit repetitive where she's just lost in these woods and she's walking around trying to find like something to eat, something to drink, and you kind of go through a few days of her doing that and it's a bit samey. But I did feel like I was on the edge of my seat the whole time I was reading it. I really didn't know how it was going to end, and yeah, so for that it gets 3 stars. Up next we have Serpent and Dove by Shelby Maherin. Shelby. This was one of the buddy reads that I read with some people on Instagram, and I enjoyed it more than I expected to, actually. I gave it 4 stars. I found the initial opening of the book a bit weird. I found the world building to lack a bit. I was hoping for a bit more background information. But it was still a really fun read. I believe this is a debut novel, and for a debut novel it's a really chunky book, so I think it was great for a debut, and it was quite a fun read. I haven't got the rest of the series, but I am looking at buying it, so that's always a sign of a good book. Again, I think I've published a book review on this where I go into more detail, so I'll link that below. But yeah, 4 stars. Up next is Blood Sugar by Daniel Kraus. This I gave 5 stars. Finally another 5-star book in October. It's only taken a lot of books to get here. I was meant to read this last Halloween and I just put it off. I was a bit nervous because based on the cover, it looks a bit dodgy, but I promise it's not. But I'm so glad I read it. This book was a bit like The Clockwork Orange. It had a lot of made-up language, a lot of made-up slang, and the things it discussed were so miserable. It's written from the perspective of a kid. I think he's around 13 years old, but we never get told. But this kid's just living a rough life and they're about to do something awful for Halloween. So yeah, again, I've written a book review on it. I'll link it below. 5-star. I thought this was amazing, and I'm so frustrated with myself that I didn't read it last year, but very pleased that I finally got a 5-star book after a lot of 3-4 stars previous. Up next we have This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, and I gave this book 4 stars. I had seen a few clips of this TV show adaptation on TikTok and I was really intrigued by it, so when I got it I was looking forward to reading it. I picked it up pretty much straight away. I think I only got the book in August. What I didn't realise at the time of requesting or wanting to read it is that Adam Kay is a doctor on a labour ward, and anything like that creeps me out a bit. So I was a bit like, a lot of the time reading it. I've learnt a lot about women that I probably didn't want to know. But it was really good, and I came away from that book feeling angry on behalf of everyone who works for the NHS. They are being so let down, and I think Adam Kay did a really good job of hitting you with these really rough, depressing scenes in this hospital and then telling you a little short story about something hilarious that happened, and it just really helped break the tension of the book and stopped you feeling really miserable all the time, which I imagine is how he felt for a lot of his career. But it was an interesting read. I will probably never pick it up again. I am glad I've read it, and I probably will watch the TV show just out of curiosity. 4 stars. Up next is The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. I gave this book 3 stars. Again, this was another book that was recommended to me on the basis that I love Gothic fiction, and so I should really pick this up. And I found it to be painfully slow and painfully painful at the end, where it felt like everything that had happened was pointless because of some weird plot twist. It's hard to explain without spoiling it, but it just kind of felt like, what's the point in reading that whole book then? But the concept was interesting. I enjoyed the idea of these creepy silent companions around the house, but none of the weird bits that you wanted explained ever really got explained, so it was quite a frustrating read. But it was a really pretty cover, and that's the only reason why I picked it up. I have since given it away, hence it not being here, but yeah, glad I've ticked it off my list. And finally, we have Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Caitlin Doty. This was another 5-star read, and I loved this book. I watch Caitlin's YouTube videos, and she does the Ask a Mortician channel, and they are so amazing. Her voice is so soothing and just so wonderful, and she will be sitting there telling you about how people have been torn to shreds or their bodies have been decomposed, and you're just like, this is lovely, tell me more. She's so wonderful. So in this book, she basically asked some children to give her questions about death, which they did, and she then answers it. It's definitely not made for children. I think it can come across as quite an easy read, so it might be seen as being for kids, but it's definitely not. Some of the things she talks about, unless you want to explain that to your child, you do you. But it was such a good book, and I am so morbidly curious in all things about death, so I really enjoyed this, and I'd like to get her other books. I think she's got 2 others that I haven't read. But yeah, this was a great 5-star read. I'm so pleased I picked it up, and her humour of her videos really translates well to her writing. It was wonderful. These are the books I read in October. Let me know if you've read any of them. Let me know if you disagree with any of my opinions. I feel like I've probably rattled a few feathers, but I stand by what I said. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Thank you. Bye.
Mahurin.
Mahurin?
Mahurin.
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 I'm going to put that at the end of this video.